really thankful and honored to have you.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. I appreciate you inviting me to do this afternoon, Wednesday afternoon session with everybody. I haven't actually taught this content that we're going to be presenting today to an online community. So it's really exciting. It's a new experience for me. It was a bit of a challenge because I have so much content and to try to distill it into about 2 hours for you guys that's useful and relevant. So today what we're going to be talking about is I'm going to give you a little bit of my backstory and history of how I got into this. Then we're going to talk about Chinese medicine and TCM ophthalmology and pretty much how the organs and how the systems and something called five-wheel theory, just how it relates to the eyes and kind of the broad spectrum and how we look at Chinese medical ophthalmology. And then I know a lot of you guys are interested, so I wanted to give a little bit on the end on the microacupuncture system, a little bit on that. I know a lot of people are interested because that's the primary system that I use for treating eye diseases in addition to some other things. So I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about that. And then if we have time towards the end, we will certainly open it up to a few Q&A session and answer some of your questions. So if you guys have any comments or questions, you could post them in the Q&A or in the chat bar. And as we go, we will, kind of get to them. And then definitely towards the end, we're going to look at some of the questions. So I hope you guys enjoy it. And we're trying to make this both theory with, so you understand the backside, but I'm also going to give you some of my clinical pearls on things you could do in clinic to work on some of your cases. So let's get started. So let me start with my screen share here, my PowerPoint. Okay, so obviously we're talking about Chinese medical ophthalmology. That is the subject of today's conversation. We're also talking about ophthalmic acupuncture and just an overall understanding of how we approach ophthalmology from a Chinese medical standpoint. So the next slide we're going to look at. So of course I want to give thanks to Cal ATMA for inviting me to do this. I love pretty much anybody who's doing anything to advance the profession or move things forward or bring things together towards unity. We can't have enough of that. So for anybody who I have been in acupolitics, anybody who's in working in the fields in acupuncture politics know that it's thankless work, it's tiring, it's volunteer work. So to all of you guys who are involved with this, it's kind of stressful and it's a lot of work. And I do have tons of appreciation for you guys who are kind of taking this on. So a little bit about me. I went to Pacific College in San Diego. I graduated in '97 with a master's at the time because that's the degrees we were offering. After that, I went on to Zhejiang College in Hangzhou, China. We also went up to, we studied in Beijing, we studied in Shanghai, some of the university hospitals there. So it was really great experience. We got some good exposure to a host of different conditions. Neurology, ophthalmology, a lot with scalp acupuncture, stroke, and kind of brain and peripheral and central nervous system issues. So it was really interesting to see on many levels. I'm sure some of you guys who've been out to Korea or China or Japan or anywhere out east and have seen how the hospitals are run and the big clinics out there, it's beyond impressive. So it was amazing. I had an opportunity to get out there. As I said, I was in acupuncture politics for a while, past president, New Jersey Association, executive board member for the Guild, board of directors for the AAAOM. And now I pretty much focus my practice on my clinical practice. I do a lot of teaching. I teach practice management. I teach Chinese medical ophthalmology, obviously my area of expertise. So why did I get into the field? A lot of reasons. First and foremost, so I graduated in 97. About 99, 2000, I started to get interested in ophthalmology because I had some glaucoma patients and some macular degeneration patients. And when I went back to my notes, not dissing on PCOM or anything like that, but at the time there wasn't any education out there. I mean, in my entire 4 years at school, 3.5, 4 years, whatever it was, I had like 3 pages of notes, not, three, that's like sides. So it was actually a page, 3 sides of notes, like 3 pages of notes for everything, for like all eye conditioning. And it really just talked about cataracts, myopia, and glaucoma. That was pretty much it. There wasn't really anything beyond that. And the overall tone from the instructors at that time was, don't even bother treating eye conditions. It was like deafness and, vision losses, like, don't even bother. There's not really much you can do for those conditions. So while I was in school, I kind of took that as fact, because I, invested in a lot of teachers, a lot of respect, and because they had experience. So I kind of wrote it off. I was like, all right, well, there's not too much we could do with ophthalmology. So, it's just one of those things that we don't really treat very well. After about 3 years in clinical practice, I had a few eye patients, and I started to question that. And I went back to the Shanghai text and the, CMX text, and was starting to look through the text, see what I could do to help these patients. And everything was pretty much the same. Everything was like liver yang rising, treat liver kidney yin deficiency, and that was like it across the board. And I tried the point protocols. I was doing like kind of, Sanjiao, Sanjiao points, and small intestine 6, and gallbladder 37, and gallbladder 20, and all the points that we kind of know classically that are used for vision. And my results were like so. So I was aggravated because I really liked these patients, and a couple of them specifically I connected very deeply with, and I just liked them. We really just got along very well, and I got frustrated that I couldn't help them. That I wasn't really making any, and I didn't really have an understanding of Chinese medical ophthalmology. I didn't really know what it was about. But I had this kind of voice in the back of my head that said, hey man, you can do so much for people with allergies, for headaches, for shoulder pain, for digestive issues, OBGYN stuff, orthopedics. Like, what's the story? Like, why can't you treat eyes? So it was like this question just kept coming up, like, why is eyes different? Like, why is eyes and treating vision like this total, like, no-fly zone when it comes to acupuncture? So we didn't really have much online. Google, like, I'm dating myself, didn't really exist back then. We had, Yahoo a little bit, maybe the AOL search, but there wasn't too much resources to even go out. And, there was books, that was it. There wasn't like, there wasn't a lot of online data that was available to us, especially there wasn't anything like PubMed or, Medscape or anything that has these Google Scholar that has resources for us to research. So there wasn't a lot of books. There wasn't a lot of, content in the books that we had. There wasn't a lot of online resources. So what do you do? So I started just kind of reaching out and calling and talking to other practitioners, went to China, and I just started mining and searching. It was on kind of like a vision quest, as I call it, for other acupuncturists or practitioners who had any experience in treating eye conditions. So I found a few, and I'm going to introduce those to you guys a little bit later on in the session. But it was a quest. It was kind of like a passion. It was like this whole, like, I have to find this out. It was like, I was very aware that I was kind of set on this path. I couldn't rest until I found out with certainty that acupuncture either was or was not effective for treating eye conditions. And at that time, based on what I knew about acupuncture, I wasn't convinced that there was nothing that could be done. So that was it. I kind of took on the challenge, the TCM Ophthalmology Challenge, which unfortunately was not a 90-day challenge. It was a little more than that. So, that's what happened. So fast forward 20 years later, the first book I published, these are all the books that we put out, with the Healing Your Eyes in Chinese Medicine. This book I started writing about 17 or 18 years ago. It was about a year and a half before my oldest son, David, was born. So that's kind of how I gauge this. And that book was really a culmination of all the research that I had done. I spent a lot of time talking to acupuncturists and, kind of non-acupuncturists and chiropractors and physicians and holistic healthcare providers to get whatever I can. I had like this binder filled, which was like a 4-inch thick binder, just with all the stuff that I had acquired, all the information, some of it useful, some of it relevant, some not. But what I wanted to do was, now that I had all this information, I was starting to hear from other acupuncturists because they knew I was doing research. So they're, oh, I heard you got some research, you have some information on eyes, like, can you share with us? So long and short, I decided to write a book to share the information, and also as a statement. Like, to me, putting the book out, in addition, it was designed for both practitioners and lay people to educate them and just simply state, hey guys, acupuncture, Chinese medicine can help with vision conditions. So after I started treating some patients, I started seeing results. So now I wanted to kind of destroy that false perspective that I had, that acupuncture really couldn't do much for people with eye conditions. So this kind of smashed that belief system and that worldview. That was like, hey, I'm calling BS. Acupuncture is really good for helping eye diseases. It's not a cure-all. It's not this magic stuff, but there's a real science behind this. And this is my first venture of kind of writing a book and getting the information out there. And what helped is that since I graduated acupuncture school, I'd spend a lot of time studying functional medicine before it was even called functional medicine. So what that did is it really helped me with the languaging, because those of you guys know, not so much now, but those of you guys who graduated acupuncture school maybe like 15, 20, 25 or more years ago, like when we came out of school, there wasn't a lot of modern interpretations of Chinese medicine and acupuncture. It was very industry jargon and a lot of like chi blood and fluids. And I didn't really know how to talk about what we do in conventional medicine, or biomedical terms, or just lay terms. I didn't really know how to explain. So what I found was that functional medicine, or at the time I was studying with a man named Steve Stittler, and then I went on to study with Tatis Karazian, those guys really helped me take the principles and ideas of Chinese medicine and put them into terms and ideas and concepts that people could understand. So inside the Healing Your Eyes of Chinese Medicine, that you guys will see there's some functional medicine language inside of that. And again, that was just like really valuable, and that really having that education really helped me, because I've read so many books on Chinese medicine that was, as we all have, a chi blood and fluids, but if you don't know the language and you don't know the definitions, it's kind of like over your head a little bit. And I remember before I went to acupuncture school, I read The Web That Had No Weaver, and I loved it. But like 80% of it was just over my head just because I didn't know the language and I didn't know the definitions and the terminology. So that was the first book. That book, Healing Your Eyes of Chinese Medicine, there's not a lot of acupuncture inside that. It's just kind of some theory, a little bit on herbs, a little bit on eye exercises, diet, therapy, causes, etiology, patterns, stuff like that. So the next book after this came out, people were asking us about, hey, what are your protocols? Do you have like points and protocols that you can use to treat eye conditions? So I was literally spent 2 to 3 hours a day just emailing with other acupuncturists, like just sharing ideas and strategies with them. So I ended up hooking up with two physicians, Chinese medical doctors in China who specialize in ophthalmology through the Beijing press, and we co-authored this book, Ophthalmology in Chinese Medicine, which is based on the treatment protocols that are used in mainland China, primarily the Beijing hospitals of ophthalmology. So that was like, that was a real good TCM. So any of you guys looking for that, for real, it's real like kind of biomedical in Chinese medicine. So we talk about the biomedicine, then we talk about the Chinese medical patterns, and then we give points and prescriptions and other, kind of guidance and recommendations inside that book. So that was probably about 10 years ago. And then about 5 years ago, I wrote the Black Book of Microacupuncture. And those of you guys who heard me lecture on this know that this was kind of like a dark secret. It was kind of like an oral tradition. Me and most of the other people who were trained in the system had signed legal forms saying that we couldn't, share or disclose the information and the protocols and stuff like that. And after using the system and developing the system and evolving the system past what I was originally taught, which I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit out later, I took it upon myself to kind of reorient myself and had the belief system that, hey, this is my stuff now. I've been using this stuff for 15 years and I've kind of modified it. So I had a conversation with Parada, the guy who taught me, who passed a couple years ago. And I asked him if he was cool with me writing this book, and I was going to put him on a whole page as a co-author and offered that to him. And he told me no. He said, you've been really, doing well with this, what I taught you, and you've advanced it really well. So, I didn't even know he was sick. It was about a year before he passed. I didn't know he was sick at the time. So he kind of gave me like the blessing to go ahead and do it and write and teach and stuff like that. So it was a very, it was emotional. It was an emotional time. And when I taught my first microacupuncture 48 class, probably about 2 years ago, like I fully broke down. Like it was so emotional. It was just, there was so much information and emotion behind this stuff that I'd wanted to teach for so long. And just, just being there and seeing, 30 students in front of me and, just like, oh, it's finally here. So it was so great. And this book originally was going to be the clinical manual. I was just going to keep it for the course, but I figured like, what the heck? I just wanted to like put it out there and let people see it. So it is used as part of the training. But, I know some kind of people like can't like travel or train with me. So it's a good way to kind of wing it for those of you guys who just want to kind of dabble in it a little bit or try it out, kind of road test it. So the other books that you guys see on the bottom are more of my patient primers. What these do is these are based on conversations, lectures, and teleconferences that I've given. Those are the three main conditions I see: retinitis pigmentosa, macular degeneration, and glaucoma. So these are edited transcripts and more information based on lectures again and conversations that I've had with acupuncturists, patients, and physicians. So it really helps people understand like what we're doing and how acupuncture and Chinese medicine can specifically help their condition. So I use these as like patient primers. We give them out to any patients that have these eye conditions. They're on Kindle, on Amazon for 99 cents. So it's just more information to get out to patients. And we're offering a discount, which I'll talk to you guys for any of you guys who are interested in these books at the end, to any of you guys who are attendees here. So what was cool is, so I started to get some traction, right? A lot of my patients were getting great results, and they were working at like Balsam Palmer down in Florida, and Johns Hopkins and Mass Eye and Ear, a lot of the major eye university clinics. And patients were going back to these clinics, and the doctors there were testing them, the ophthalmologists and retinal specialists. And the doctors were starting to see their improvement. One case, lucky. Two, lucky. 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 cases. They're like, shoot, I guess it's that. They're all saying the same thing. They're going to work with Dr. Rosenfarb. And it's not that, amazing. It was just, I had a protocol that got results for especially like retinitis pigmentosa, which is genetic night blindness, where there's no conventional treatment. There's nothing, like zero. So they asked me if I was willing to do a study, and of course I agreed. So I created the protocols for the study, and then I trained an acupuncturist at Hopkins to deliver the studies, which was part of the protocol, because I wanted to show everybody that it wasn't like me. I didn't have like any magical, weird, skills. Like I could train somebody to do it like literally overnight and also have people get the same results or similar comparable results. So I went down to Hopkins, trained an acupuncturist in the protocol, probably about 4 to 5 hours. Then I did the same thing after that study was so successful. We had about a 52 to 54% success rate for a one-size-fits-all shotgun protocol, which is fantastic. So then we got a $250,000 grant from the NIH, where we did a second study at Nova Southeastern in Florida. I went down and trained Natty down in South Florida, who administered the treatments for that study. And it was also very similar. We had somewhere around a 50% success rate. So that got some traction, really excited. So, anytime patients are like going to the doctors, well, that's not proven, and there's no evidence to support that. Yeah, now there is, so kind of check that box. But it was great. It was great to have the opportunity. It was great to be involved in that discipline. And one of the coolest things about doing research is you actually get to see the part, at least part of the mechanism or the mechanics of the effects of acupuncture. So we're seeing like in real time with ocular Dopplers, the increased blood flow. We're seeing the photoreceptors firing up, the visual cortex lighting up. So we're seeing like functional improvement. We're seeing the systemic improvements that people, we call like the radiant effect, all the added benefits that people were getting as a result of treatment. So it was an awesome experience. Here's we went to the SARS, the Society of Acupuncture Research, after we finished the first study. This was our poster presentation that we did at that study That was a lot of fun. We were in Michigan. Again, that was probably about 8 years ago. And then I got a call from the Dr. Oz show, and I get practitioners ask me all the time, like, how'd you get on? I have no idea. I know a very good friend of mine, Jill Blakeway, had frequented Dr. Oz, and she never told me, but I suspect maybe she hooked me up and tipped me off. But other than that, I'm not really sure. They just called me and started asking me questions, and they said, hey, would you like to come on and be a guest talking about, holistic ways to deal with eye conditions? So that was another fun experience as well. What's really happened that was beyond my expectations is the geographical area, or our patient population became a world population. So like when I went to acupuncture school, like when we took our practice management courses, it was all about, here's your office, drive a 5 or a 10-mile radius around your clinic, and that's where all your patients are going to come from. So that was my view. I was like, okay, great. So everybody's going to come from maybe 4 or 5 towns. Is somebody going to drive more than a half hour to come see me? Like that was crazy. I remember I went to David Singer. I did some training with him. He's a chiropractor. He used to do a lot of practice management for acupuncturists. Maybe still does. But anyway, I remember sitting in the audience, and he was talking about this patient that came to him from Jamaica. He was on a vacation in Jamaica, and he cracked this guy's back, and the guy used to come once a year from Jamaica. And I was like, whatever, dude. I was like, nobody comes from Jamaica to go see you, just kind of, whatevering about that. Here I am, like 2 or 3 years later, when I started to develop this eye stuff, we had patients coming from literally all around the world. So this is a map that we have in my clinic, and whenever patients come in, they put a map of where they're from. So it's cool, it's a cool visual to see that, and it always reminds us that, what we're taught in whatever our original boxes or our frame can always be expanded. So that's just that. It's a cool thing. It's a cool reference for us. So the long and the short, guys, it's very simple. When we're dealing with eye patients, we're using, I said microacupuncture 48 here, but it's any of the systems that we're using. Our goal is very simple from a clinical standpoint. We want to help our patients improve and recover lost vision, all right? Or if they're early stage and they haven't lost vision, keep what they got. Recover what they can, keep what they got. That's it. We have cases that are chronic, degenerative, like glaucoma, macular degeneration, retinitis pigmentosa, Stargardt's, Usher syndrome. And then you can have acute situations like a retinal detachment, like an eye stroke, NAION, something like that, ischemia, like some type of event or episode, like a stroke that happens. You can have like ocular Lyme, you can have like Epstein-Barr, you can have like shingles can attack the optic nerve. So we can have these episodes, or we can have these progress. It doesn't matter. The only difference is that with an acute episode, you're going to kind of max out. So you're usually going to treat somebody and you're going to hit a plateau, and that's pretty much it. They're kind of done with treatment. Where patients who have chronic degenerative conditions, it's pretty much going to be lifelong. And I just tell people that. Just tell them right up front, like right now where we are, there's no conventional treatment. So they need to know that this is a long-term chronic degenerative condition that, they need to prepare that this is going to be some level of maintenance. And that's going to be different for different people. So let's talk a little bit about Chinese medical ophthalmology. We have 2 sections we're going to get into. The longer section is going to be on Chinese medical ophthalmology. And then the second section is going to be a little bit shorter. I'm going to get into the microacupuncture specifically with you guys. Okay. Let's talk real quick about vision in the eye. So just a little bit of statistics, because we're talking about eyes. You guys should have a little bit of frame. And I know some of you guys have done some training with me in the past. This is a good review. I review this stuff constantly. So, the eye contains more than 50% of all the sensory receptors in the body. That's humans, guys. Humans, we are visual creatures. Dolphins are sonar creatures. Dogs, canines are sensory, olfactory creatures. So as a human species, the majority, I think it's like 50% of the total sensory receptors in the body are in the eye, but I think I read somewhere like 90 some odd % of the sensory input that comes into our experience that we're processing comes into us visually. All right. Obviously, if you've lost your vision, or maybe you're a musician or you're a dancer, you're more kinesthetic, maybe that's going to shift as a result of your training. But for every, the average Joe, half of your sensory receptors in your body are in your retina, and like 90% of the information that's coming in, you're receiving visually. And again, if you're a musician or you're a physical ballet, martial arts, it might be a little bit different. So also the eye is a 2.5 centimeter diameter. It's pretty big. It's about, you guys, like if you've seen like a skull, the cavern, it goes pretty deep. It's about the size of a ping pong ball. So let me get rid of this. I got a pop-up thing happening here. So what you see with the anterior part of the eye is only 1/6. All right. So it's like people get, they don't realize how deep it is. So go online and check your, do some anatomy and stuff like that to get a better appreciation. And now we have like 3D animation. You get a good evaluation of that. So vision, the process of vision or seeing is an energetic process, right? It's a non, you can't really quantify it. I guess you can with like light rays and stuff like that, but the process is really non-material, but it is an interplay of matter and energy, right? Because we have the hardware, which is our eye, our optic nerve, and our brain, our entire, visual processing system. So we have the eye structure, which is more yin, right? We know the yin activity, or the body parts are yin, and the process of seeing, the vision, is electrical impulses and chemicals and energy of photons. So that's all yang, right? It's all frequencies and stuff like that. So let's move on to the next slide. So here's a little quick view of your eye anatomy. Again, if you're treating eyes, it's good to have a basic overview of the eye anatomy. Right here we show the anterior compartment, which is the conjunctiva, the cornea, the anterior chamber, which is of course where the aqueous is when we're starting to deal with cases like glaucoma. The posterior chamber is the back of the eye. We have the iris, which gives your eye color and it constricts the pupil. This is where the ciliary muscles are that help flex the lens so we can focus an image. We have the sensory ligaments, again, which really help move the iris and the ciliary body. We have the sclera. So now we have what we call the coats or the tunics, right? The different protective layers. So the fibrous layer consists of the sclera and the cornea, right? This is the metal aspect, or the structure and the protection of the eye. So anytime we see issues with the sclera and the cornea, we're going to talk a little about this more, we look at metal issues because it's very fibrous and it has a very metallic structure to it. The vascular layer is the next layer down, and that is the nourishing layer, and the ciliary body is in the iris as well. So this area is primarily deals with the circulation, the bringing of nutrients, the bringing of oxygen, the removal of carbon dioxide, and the removal of ocular waste products. So this is our circulatory system, okay? And then finally, we have the deeper layers, which are, of course, the photoreceptors, the rods and cones, which merge into the optic nerve, which take the signals basically through the brain all the way to the visual cortex for interpretation. So we have that layer too, the rods and cones. And that's what we are looking at over there. So again, so we have those 3 layers that you guys want to know about: the fibrous layer, the vascular layer, and the nervous layer. One's structure, one's blood flow, one's conducting nerve signals. So how we see is very similar. Most eye doctors will use the analogy of a camera. So you guys can see on the image on the left, we have an object, which is a light bulb over here, and the light rays come through, and they go through the lens, and they're projected on the back of the eye upside down, which is the same way that we see. Things are upside down, but our brain just kind of corrects it. So the lens of the eye is similar to the lens of a camera. The film is similar to the retina, all right? That's where the images are projected, okay? So then the brain, the different various parts of the brain will help us determine location, color, movement, orientation, predicting motion, stuff like that. So it really helps us get a sense of where things are in time and space and gravity. So our brain is, most people just think of the eyes, right? But the brain is, anytime we're working with visual issues, as long as it's not like a scratch cornea or just like a structural abnormality, anytime we're dealing with neurovascular issues, meaning the brain the eye, the optic nerve, the retina, or the vascular system. We're dealing with the entire visual system there. So let's move on to, so this I wanted to throw in a quick slide here. This is what we're going to see when, I'm going to zip down here a little bit. This is the structure of the eye. So this is what you'll get in the old days when the guys used to get up and, you know, kind of look in the back of your eye. They used to flip the thing down. For those of you guys who are like over 45, that's how they used to look. And then we have the ophthalmoscope. Now we have really cool equipment where they just, you know, put a drop in your eye to dilate your pupil. And they take these really cool pictures with these HD cameras in the back of your eye. And this is what it looks like. So right here, we have the optic disc, which is where the head of the optic nerve comes out. And this is where we start to see problems with glaucoma or eye strokes or optic nerve hypertrophy or optic nerve atrophy. This is a real high yang point we could see because of the yellow bright color, a lot of yang activity, arguably one of the most yang places in the body. All right, super, super yang activity going on there. Then we see the retinal vessels. We also have the arteries in there, and that delivers, again, blood to and from. We have the macula area where the concentration of cone photoreceptors, remember we said we have two types of photoreceptors, rods and cones. The macula is the area where the photoreceptors, the cone photoreceptors are concentrated, and even more central to that, what would be kind of like the nucleus, would be the fovea. And that's the highest concentration of the cones in the macula. And that is where we have our sharp HD vision, a real fine detail. So in cases like macular degeneration, Stargardt's, when this area can kind of get affected, macular degeneration or macular dystrophy or any of those conditions, this area starts to break down and we start to lose our ability to read or facial recognition. We can't see the computer, can't see our phones. We look at people, their faces are distorted, lines get distorted. So again, this is in our courses, what we do is we go through, this is a healthy back of the eye, it's called a fundus exam or a retinal image. And then we go through different pathologies, and you guys, you know, you can kind of do that in course or do that on your own. You can Google it or, you know, wherever, YouTube, and look at different images of this, which will give you information. So I just wanted to show you guys, because this is, you know, we're going to see a lot of that. So let's talk a little bit quick about what causes failing vision. Let's stop for a second. Do we have any burning questions that people are asking? I don't want it to, like, maybe take one or two or three or something like that. Anything going on?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Rosenfarb. I want to add one comment from your one of your slides. You mentioned about your patient, which is you treated worldwide. But I want to tell you that today we have a participant from different parts of the world. So I want to welcome all of them.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for joining us. Yes.
Welcome, everybody.
Thank you. So I have a couple of questions. I'm sure that you will answer them. There was a lot of questions about retinitis pigmentosa, and also if you have seen that there is an improvement in day and night visions.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that you will cover later.
Yeah, let's get, so any of the case study questions, we're definitely gonna get into those, but let's hit those towards the end.
Right, yeah. And also I asked everybody who has any question and raise their hand, waiting until the question and answer time. I don't want to interrupt you, you know, during this time. And everybody, if they need, you know, the PowerPoint, the selection of the PowerPoint of Dr. Rosenfarb, please go to the Q&A, not go to the actually chat part, because chat part is not working. So Q&A, and send it to me. I will respond to you. I will correct all the email and will send it to you. And also, if you have any question, please wait until the question and answer time. Thank you.
Yep. We will get to them to the best that we can, and then I'll talk to you. I'll give you guys information that we can actually, if there's a lot of questions and we run out of time because we want to respect everybody's time, we'll make it up to you guys, I promise. So, so let's dive into what causes vision loss. You know, it's like, that's a big question. And it's a huge question for conventional biomedicine, because most of these conditions, the conditions that there's no treatment for, again, retinitis pigmentosa, dry macular degeneration, things like normal tension glaucoma, ischemia, eye stroke, stuff like that. Even things like diabetic retinopathy. There's no conventional biomedical treatment unless there's bleeding, in which case they'll do injections or sometimes they'll do laser, to kind of cauterize some of the blood vessels there. But for a lot of these conditions, there's not a lot to offer. And that has a lot to do because there's not a lot of understanding from conventional biomedicine. And guys, this is where Chinese medicine really kicks butt, because we have 4,000 years of history behind us. And we have books and texts and references that make mention of these eye conditions and have a really good understanding. Some of them you have to kind of interpret the poetry, because we know Chinese medicine is, very like poetic, and sometimes you kind of miss the analogies there. But I've had some amazing, TCM scholars have helped me interpret a lot of the understandings behind this. So my point is that we have this 4,000 years wealth of knowledge and understanding. And 4,000 years ago, the Chinese medical doctors were treating patients with these conditions and logging their results and their observations. And they were definitely a lot more keenly aware than we are now, because they didn't have the diagnostic equipment. So that's to figure out what's going on. So we start with the causative factors, and we know we can look at Chinese medicine, but let's look at this from a little bit more of a lay person. And the reason I do this is because I want you guys to be able to explain to your patients. Like, I want you to take what we're doing. You could understand the Chinese medicine, all the jargon's in my books, and I didn't want to waste your time by just repeating what's inside my books, because you guys can get that anytime you want. So genetic predisposition, we know a lot of these conditions: retinitis pigmentosa, glaucoma, macular degeneration, diabetes, even like stroke, eye stroke. A lot of these conditions can have a genetic predisposition. Does it guarantee that you're going to get it? Of course not. But it just means that you do have a tendency there that if the gene signaling happens and we activate this disease process, then the gene can put the disease process in motion. We could see things like progressive vision loss, trauma, injury, illness. Of course, certain drugs or medications. We know that there are medications for, first and foremost, we know steroids can raise eye pressure and cause things like glaucoma. There's a host of medications. I mean, you guys watch the 7 o'clock news with all the, drug commercials and the commercials about the drugs, and every commercial says, if you lose vision or blurry vision, or you could suddenly go blind, or your eyes pop out of your head spontaneously, please discontinue using this drug. Every pharmaceutical affects the liver, the brain, the eyes. So most medications have some impact on the vision, or a potential impact on the vision. So it's important to know that, and especially knowing with your patients, if you're treating a patient who has an eye disease, listing their medications, and also knowing if there's any potential side effects with the meds they're taking, and or recreational drugs or anything like that as well. Alcohol. So metabolic imbalances is another thing. We just talked about diabetes, hormonal imbalances, adrenal issues, pancreatic issues, thyroid issues. Any metabolic or hormonal issues can absolutely be a primary, if not a secondary or an accelerator to a lot of these eye conditions. So we know crappy diet, poor nutrition. The eyes are just like every part of our body. It needs certain types of healthy foods. Now, there are some key nutrients that the eyes need to function. One is omega DHAs, critical for nerve regeneration. It also needs a very constant flow of glucose, right? The brain and the eyes use more blood sugar than the majority of the body. So just because we're always using our eyes except when we're not sleeping or maybe meditating or catching a cat nap. So not fueling our body with the right nutrients, not carotenoid antioxidants, lacking taurine, which is the most abundant amino acid found in the eyes, neuroprotective Chinese herbs and vitamins and supplements and key minerals and nutraceuticals. This is very, very critical to eye, and also putting junk in our body. Greasy fried foods, trans fats, processed foods, any of that. So nutrition's a big part. We deal with that with all of our patients. Eye strain. Anybody use a computer at all? It's kind of, or these new things called cell phones, right? Of course, everybody uses them, right? Everybody's like this, on their phone, and our posture is kind of like this. Kind of hunching around. If you got teenagers or kids like me, they kind of curl their bodies around their phones. we're on our screens for extended periods of time. And from these things, we have a couple of things that happen. We have the electromagnetic stress, the frequencies that come off, and we have things that something called blue light. So blue light is a radiation that comes off these screens, your TVs, your laptops, your computers. And if you guys could see, I'm not sure if you can see with the light, but my glasses have like a little purplish, bluish tint to it. I'm gonna try to move my head around so you can see. These are blue light protected. So that means it gives me an additional 60 to 80% protection from the screens, whether it's TV, computers, laptops, tablets, phones, whatever. And so the eye strain, whether it's just from reading or screen use, is a real thing. So we have to have our patients and ourselves use the, on our phones, we have the blue light protection, which usually is the night settings. On our screens, we want to make sure there's blue light protection. If you don't have it, have your glasses, put a coat on them. And if you don't need reading glasses or glasses to work on the computer, just get clear glasses that are blue light protection. You get for like 20 bucks on Amazon. So that's just something that you guys can do. But eye strain is a big deal. And how do you know you have eye strain? You've been on the computer, you get this. You start to get a headache, or you're like, oh, you kind of just, your brain, you feel strained. So it's really important to give yourself a break during that time, okay? Don't really push through it. It's really, rest your eyes. Don't strain them. No bueno. So we look at epigenetics, right? Epigenetics is getting more and more popular. Epigenetics is the opposite of genetics, right? Genetics is our hardwiring, our blueprint, our jing, if you will, that we got from our mom and dad. This is our blueprint. This is the codes that we have. This is our operating system. It's our software that we come to this life with. So epigenetic factors are everything else. Right? It's the most interesting and most maddening field of study, because it basically says anything or any combination of things or stress factors can potentially alter our gene signaling and gene expression. So epigenetic factors can be anything from sunlight to pollution to emotional stress to crappy diet, to medications, anything that's done to us, or emotions that habitual emotions or lifestyle or patterns, stuff like that. Epigenetic factors can also be a combination. So it could be like, I was a kid, I got yelled at by my mom while I was eating Special K. So now I have a wheat sensitivity because I kind of did that. And that, you know what I mean? So there are all these factors, and it was winter. So, there's all these weird factors that happen that create the perfect storm that created the signaling to create a disease process. So it's the study of all these environmental factors, internal or external, from Chinese medicine, that could potentially affect, accelerate, or be causative or precipitative factors for the disease process. Specifically, in this case, we're talking about eye diseases. So a lot of these eye conditions that show up 8 years old, 18, 28, 38, 48, 58, why do they show up at this time? Like, we're born with good vision, and all of a sudden they just show up. We just start to see these eye conditions. Like, what happened? Like, what epigenetic factors, internal or external, or combination of them, caused this new expression of this disease to come about? And that is something that we, as Chinese medical practitioners, or if you do functional medicine, we have that capacity and that skill set to dive in real deep, where conventional biomedicine just does not have the training or the understanding to do that. So really, really good. And again, it's not dogging Western medicine. It's just saying that, again, it's complementary, integrative. So where they have their strengths and weak strengths, like, diagnostic testing and medication and surgeries, we have a deeper level of understanding and perspective, that just because conventional biomedicine is only 100 years old or something like that, at least modern. Poor circulation, obviously we know in Chinese medicine, qi, blood and fluids, all disease process as a result of stagnation and or hyperfunction, hypofunction, plus the internal, external pathogens. And then of course, any systemic diseases, you can have a causative primary disease where your eye conditions, which again, another perfect example would be like ocular Lyme, diabetic retinopathy, MS, Hashimoto's, thyroiditis, stuff like that. These are primary diseases that have a secondary visual effect as a result of them. Okay, you guys good with that? Okay, so again, conventional medicine diagnoses and treats an isolated organ pathology. What does that mean? They're just looking at your eyes. They're not looking at blood work. They're not really taking most, not all, but most are not taking a systemic evaluation of what's going on with your whole body and what caused it. Why? They simply just don't care. I have a lot of friends who are eye specialists and cardiologists and all types of specialists. They're just not interested. You know, that's just the way they're trained. It's like, well, I don't really have anything to do with the cardiovascular system, so I don't really care about that. You have an endocrine problem, somebody's got diabetic retinopathy and it's affecting their eyes. I don't really know about the blood sugar. I don't really care about it. I learned about it in med school, but they have to deal with an internist or, you know, endocrinologist. That's not my field. I don't really deal with that. So in Chinese medicine, even though like I've gotten quasi-criticized, you know, is a lot of people have who specialize, go like, oh, well, you just specialize, you know, but it's not, because even inside something like Chinese medical ophthalmology or anything else, for those of you guys who specialize, you know, we are still taking a broad spectrum pattern approach to what's going on. We're just focusing on the eyes. Why? Because that's the chief complaint, and that's the main reason why people are coming to see us, because they want us to help with their eyes. That's the main problem. But we zoom out, right? They come in zoomed in on their vision. We as practitioners can zoom out and do a systemic evaluation of, you know, do the pattern evaluation, ask the questions, and, you know, get a perspective to paint a picture of what's going on, and then zoom back in and say, how does this relate to the vision? We're going to get more into that specifically in a few minutes. And the decline of vision is, well, it's just natural. Vis-a-vis, you're old, you know, like you're just old. Sorry. Or you just got bad genes, or you got bad luck, you know. Sorry, I don't know. You just get used to going blind, and it's either going to stabilize or get worse. So it is very, very doom and gloom for most people, unless you got cataracts, because that's a good, or you need glasses. But other than that, any eye diseases with you know, retinal neuro-ophthalmology is doom and gloom. So our conventional approaches are simple. We have glasses, contact lenses, LASIK surgery maybe, medications. We have steroids, eye drops, Visine if you get red eyes, maybe you know, wet tears. You have surgical procedures, you know, cataract surgery, which is great. If you have a, God forbid, a retinal detachment, you need to get surgery to put it back together, put a gas bubble in, or, you know, silicone in there. Or they don't have anything. Like, again, we talked about retinitis pigmentosa, things like normal tension glaucoma, eye stroke, Usher syndrome, Stargardt's. That's it. Got to wait and see what happens. Don't call us, we'll call you. Nothing. We don't have a damn thing, which is unfortunate, but we know we do. We have a lot to offer. So this is, you know, preaching to the choir over here, but we know Chinese medicine has a different way of looking at this. And we talked about that a little bit. We look at the body, not just parts as parts. You know, I tell my patients all the time, I would love to send you across the street to STS Tires. We have a tire place across us where, like your brakes, you could swap them out, pop your eyeballs out, pop in a new pair. Good, you're good to go. On your way. So it would be great. Like, I would be psyched if we had something like that, but we don't. It's not parts as parts. This is not mechanics. This is not machinery. This is a living ecosystem. So we need to treat it as such. So everything is connected, and vision can be influenced by all organs and all systems of the body. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes when we talk about the organ systems as they relate to the vision. According to Chinese medicine, generally speaking, the eye disease, most eye diseases are related to liver and kidney. Why? Because we talked about earlier, we know the liver is more of the functional aspect of vision. Those of you guys may have not have heard that before. And the kidneys is the structural part. We know the brain, right? We know in Chinese medicine, we learn the brain and the spinal cord is part of the kidney system or the water system. Guess what? Not all people teach that the eyes, the optic nerve in the eyes are part of the central nervous system, which means that's part of that kidney system. So the retina, the optic nerve, all the internal neurological structures of the eye, which is actually a smaller brain, the structural damages or the structural integrity relates to the kidney. The function of seeing generally relates more to the liver function, okay? And we know, of course, it's a holistic, integrative approach. We're not anti-biomedicine. We're not like, it's not this or that. It's integrative, holistic. Why? Because in my experience, the integrative approach produces the best clinical outcomes for all patients when we take an integrative approach, and you guys know that. So how does acupuncture work? And you guys know this from your definitions, but it's good to be able to explain it to patients in lay terms. Before I did this, I swear to God, when I first started treating eyes, people were like, oh, how does acupuncture work? I'm like, don't know, you know, like we put the needles in and the chi we think goes to the eyes, and I start talking about the liver energy and the split in the yang, and, you know, I didn't know. It was all theory based on what I heard in acupuncture school and what I read in books. But having done the research and been involved in research studies, and now there's a lot more research coming out, we can see a mechanism of action. We know before I did the research, it was like, oh yeah, well, acupuncture increases the blood flow to the eyes. Probably. Yeah. It stimulates the nerves, we think, you know, but now we've done the research and we can back up what we're saying. So we know it increases blood flow to the eye. We know it stimulates the nerve cells. We know it wakes up the dormant retinal cells. Some of them go to sleep, right? Nerve cells can go dormant. That's a relatively new finding. I learned that from Dr. David Perlmutter. Some of you guys know he's a brain guy, does like brain stuff. Absolutely love his work. We know that acupuncture helps vision by regulating the autonomic nervous system. A lot of eye diseases are, as brain diseases are, when the sympathetic nervous system gets locked into sympathetic mode, the brain, the entire body starts to degenerate, and the eyes are not uniquely, you know, exempt from that process. So we know that acupuncture promotes a parasympathetic nervous response. People start tearing, they fall asleep, they get more relaxed, they're more groggy. So we ask for that. We see patients when we're treating them that we activate this parasympathetic nervous system, which for me, my experience, and this is not for all cases, like obviously if you're treating pain or muscle, people can be awake, right? You can put a needle in, treat somebody with a frozen shoulder, have them be awake, move it around, you're gonna see functional improvement. But my experience when we're dealing with neurological conditions, like people have to drop into alpha, or if you guys aren't familiar, alpha is the brainwave activity that's just below beta, which is our constant conscious thinking. It just transcends the critical faculty or our judgment. So we have to drop below that and get into like the chi zone or the acu zone or the, you know, half in, half out twilight zone. Like you have to get somebody to activate that parasympathetic nervous system. Very, very, very important for me whenever I'm dealing with anything, whether it's stroke, eye diseases, Parkinson's, dementia, any neurodegenerative or any neurological, whether it's acute or an episode. And again, you can see some results, like I've done scalp and we see improvements, but you still want to let it cement. And by letting the body go into parasympathetic, that's allowing the body to do deeper level healing. So of course, we're also not only working on the eye condition, we're working on the underlying cause of the disease processes by looking at the patterns in both functional medicine, Chinese medicine, naturopathic, Ayurveda, whatever you guys do, muscle testing, AK, whatever you guys do. So what's our clinical objectives? Well, of course, we talked about to recover and improve. That's it. If you got that down, that's really what we're trying to do. But on a deeper level, still staying relevant to a patient's level of understanding about what we do, you're trying to increase blood flow. Well, how does acupuncture work? If all you say is it increases blood flow to the eyes, you're telling the truth. And nobody can argue that increasing blood flow to any part of the body, unless you're dealing with cancer cells, is by no means a bad idea. You know, we're getting more oxygen, more growth factors, more stem cells, more oxygen, more food. We're eliminating, acids and waste products and carbon dioxide and everything that we want to get out of the eye, right? And we also know that we stimulate the photoreceptors. So it increases blood flow, wakes up the nerve cells of the eyes. And again, it's not just the retinal cells, it's the optic nerve, all the nerve pathways to the brain, all the way to the visual cortex. It even lights up the prefrontal cortex. So the entire brain is engaged in the visual system. Those of you guys who are registered are going to go, we're going to go to the Neuroacupuncture Summit. We do a very, very deep dive into the neuroacupuncture side of this. So that's, if you guys are interested, we're going to do that in January of 2021. We had to reschedule that event. We're also looking at things like decreasing inflammation, because that's a huge driving factor. In Chinese medicine, we know that's heat, right? So we identify that there is inflammation, then we go through our pattern diagnosis, we source the inflammation. Is it coming from the kidney, heart, or heart can come from liver, stomach, lung heat. So we source the source of inflammation. It's not just inflammation and give them turmeric, right? We're anti-inflammatories. We're more sophisticated than that. We look at the pattern, we identify where the heat's coming from, we treat that. That's why it's not a one-size-fits-all medicine. Reduce oxidative stress. We know macular degeneration, glaucoma, retinitis pigmentosa. These are diseases of oxidative stress, where oxidative stress is an accelerated aging, where there's more cancer, there's more cell breakdown. It's just the body's breaking down faster than it can build up. That's the simplest way to explain oxidative stress. Some level of oxidative stress is needed, oxidation, to help clean up all the garbage in the body. But when it becomes overwhelming to the body, where we're breaking down faster than we can build up, it's a decay, an accelerated decay. And we know that anything that is not healthy, smoking, drinking, not sleeping, stress, poor diet, anything we know in Chinese medicine that is not part of a Jing supportive lifestyle or taxes our qi, is going to accelerate oxidative stress of the brain, the eye, tax the Jing, and basically accelerate aging and disease. Identify any other causative factors or coexistent underlying patterns. That's going to be specific to the patient. Long-term neuroprotection, right? It's really, really important for preserving our vision. And of course, one of the more recent findings that came out about 2 years ago, the first research I saw came out of China. The second, third, or fourth one I saw came out of Germany. It was showing that acupuncture is tremendous in activating stem cell activity. And you guys who are treating eye patients, the big, talk of the town with eye conditions and the degenerative conditions is stem cell activity. So we really want to activate the stem cells. Acupuncture does that because acupuncture is a micro trauma. In adults and children, stem cells are for growth and development. For adults, stem cells are for repair and regeneration. You put a needle in, the body responds to that because it's a trauma by releasing stem cells. It releases to specific areas in the body, along with growth factors, which helps with repair and regeneration, that which cells are dormant, dead, and damaged. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Chinese medicine, shall we? Good.
Yeah, sure. One quick question, because two people ask about, of course, I know that maybe, you will describe it later. So what about herbal medicine? So is it, how's the portion of your practice? Is it mainly acupuncture, or is it so-so?
It combines everything. So I use Chinese herbal medicine, supplements like nutraceuticals, like Designs for Health, Apex Energetics, Cyrex, all that stuff, standard process. So I'll use Chinese medicine with kind of functional naturopathic medicine with acupuncture techniques. So it's kind of like Chinese medicine, functional medicine, naturopathic medicine. Those are the systems that I use. Pretty much anything that works. So yes, to answer that question, I am integrating supplements, Chinese herbs, Qigong eye exercises, diet therapy, pretty much everything. Lifestyle, the whole gamut.
Okay, great. Yeah. And one more last question. So before we move on, so what about, could you please also explain more later, if you have time, about the stem cell and the simulation of stem cells by acupuncture?
I do.
You have time. Okay.
I do. So if you guys want more on that, I'm not sure if I'm going to have time to get into that. I will if we have time. I do. If you go to my YouTube page, Dr. Andy Rosenfarb, I have a 45-minute presentation that I did, recorded in that group, specifically and exclusively on how acupuncture works with stem cell activity, specifically for the eyes. But it can also be applied for brain and anything else. So if I don't get to that, go to my YouTube page. Just look for the stem cell. It's about a 34-minute talk that I did. So you guys can get in on that. And I have a lot of videos for any of you guys, more education if you guys want to look on that. Okay, so let's look. In Chinese medicine, they call the eyes. We know we have 5 elements, right? But when it comes to the vision, they decided to call it 5-wheel theory. I never got a really good answer as to why they called it 5-wheel theory. The only reason I could come up with is because the iris is kind of round and it kind of looks like a wheel. I'm totally making that up because that's the only thing I came up with, but I really haven't found. I talked to some of the practitioners in China. I think it just has to do with the eye because of the round, something like that. But anyway, what it does is it takes into consideration the 5 elements and how they correlate to the specific structures of the eye. Now, what this does is it gives us guidance. It's not an absolute definitive thing. Just like we look at somebody's tongue, we don't determine that that's the end all be all. I'm just looking at tongue and that's the diagnosis. We look at this, we use this as a reference, then we check the pulse, we do our tongue, we ask questions. It's part of the picture. So I just want to, be clear that when we're looking at this, for example, we say the fire is the heart element and we see problems with the inner and outer canthus, that gives us guidance. That doesn't mean that it's definitely automatically a fire issue and we should go straight for the heart and small intestine to treat it. It just means that that's something we want to really look into, see if that's an underlying issue. So moving on, we know the earth element, we look at the spleen or pancreas and stomach. We know that has a lot to do with the eyelids, like people have droopy eyelids or swollen eyelids a lot of the time. That's the flesh, right? The muscle in the flesh of the eye. We also know the aqueous part has a lot to do with earth element classically. The metal we talked about, lung and large intestine, is the structural aspect of the eye. So it's the sclera, the cornea, also the conjunctiva, which is the immune system of the eye. It's the lymphatic system of the eye. So we know it's responsible for the immune system. We know the immune activity has a lot to do with the spleen or the earth and the metal element. We move on to the water element, or we know it relates to the kidneys and bladder. That's obviously deals with the pupil because the pupil is black, and we know the color associated with the kidneys is blue, purple, and black. It has a lot to do with the macula and the retina. The choroid, the macular retina, of course, is the photoreceptors, the rods and the cones. We talked about the optic nerve and any of the neurological structures, even the visual cortex. Anything that's like brain, optic nerve, or retina is always water. The choroid was listed classically as a water element. I tend to categorize it in the fire for obvious reasons because of the blood vessels. So I'm just making a note of that classically the choroid is in the water element because it feeds the retina, it feeds the nerve cells, but you can totally make a good argument for putting it in the fire element because of the blood vessels, right? We know that there's that carries the blood capacity in there. So the wood, we know, we talk about is the function of vision, relates to the liver and gallbladder, and structurally it has a lot to do with the eye muscles, because we know the liver has a lot to do with movement. So the 6 eye muscles that move the eye around, also the iris and the ciliary bodies, because that's the movement and the flexion of the constriction of the lens and also the flexing of the lens of the eye. So that part as well. Let me move on here. So let's do a real quick, I don't want to spend too much time on this because it's in my book, but I just figure it was very relevant because we're talking about Chinese medicine, the vision. Let's go through this real quick. Just look at the major organs and how they affiliate with the eyes and what their role is in vision. So we know the liver opens to the eyes, reflects the function of the liver. So the eyes reflect the overall health, right? We know the Shen is seen in the eyes. That's the sparkle, the twinkle, that like life force vitality, that engagement. We've all seen like the Shen disturbed, or somebody's got like, they're exhausted or they're just fried or they've been through a heartache or a loss and they're just kind of glazed over, or somebody's maybe sedated a lot on medication or drunk. It's kind of like lights are on, nobody's home, there's no Shen there. But the health of the eyes, the function of the liver, how I'm seeing, how my eyes are moving is very reflective and telling about the health of the liver or suggestive. The liver qi is connected to the eye, and the harmony of the liver qi has a lot to do with the eyes. So the smooth movement of the eyes, the smooth focus of the eyes. As we drink, one of the field sobriety tests we have are to see if the eyes shake and move. And as we know, we drink, that affects the liver. So we have, alcohol affecting the liver, which affects the nervous system. But one of the things we see when they do a field sobriety test is, kind of, they look for the eyes skipping. We also know the liver stores the blood, and the storage of blood allows the eye to see. Why? Because the liver is also where the blood sugar is stored. And we know that all the cells of our body Even the nerve cells run on glucose and glucagon, which is stored in the liver. The liver governs the tears. It means it regulates the opening and closing of the tear ducts, okay? And the tears are, of course, the luster for the eyes. They lubricate. When the eyes dry out, you have some problems. So you want to make sure that they're nice and lustrous and moist. The eyes and the heart, we know the heart governs the blood nourishes the eyes. The heart is connected with the blood vessels. All the vessels are related to the eyes. And we talked about the shen. The heart houses the shen, the spirit, the liveliness, the vitality, the engagement. Like when you look at somebody, are they engaging with their eyes? That's also a big shen. Has a lot to do with will too. I find there's a lot of kidney issues, like people who are fear and have low self-esteem, which is often a kidney thing. They'll kind of like not look around, but it has a lot to do with the heart and the engagement. And I find that a lot with the heart and kidney dysfunction, or, you know, when the liver overacts on the heart, when you're angry, what happens? You get stink eye. You know, somebody's giving you the stare down. You know, you get that stuff. So the heart will express it, but if it's coming from the liver and it's pissed off, yeah, I'm going to stare you down. Or if it's coming from the kidneys and the kidneys are weak and you have a heart and kidney disconnecting, you're going to get like a lot of like looking away, a lot of insecurity, or craziness. You know, if somebody's in a manic episode, you go, hi, how are you? You know, there's too much heart fire coming up. So, so we know that the heart's role there. So let's move on. Look at the eyes and the spleen. The spleen transports in the pancreas. I kind of use spleen pancreas. Transports the essence upwards to there. So it has this ascending nature, right? It sends the clear food. The spleen and pancreas separates the clear and turbid. So when we start getting things like edema, when we have fluid problems, we have like swollen eyes, bags around our eyes, edema, retinal fluid, excessive tearing sometimes, pus coming out of the eyes, just any excessive fluid, or what one of my teachers, Min Fan, called dirty yin fluids. That was the term he used. I loved it. I still use it all the time. Tell people when I teach, you're having dirty yin fluids in your eyes. So what happens is we don't have the spleen doesn't do its good job of transporting and transporting. We don't have that ascension. So if we see, again, if we see a problem like this, for those of you guys who are asking about herbs, like Bujang Yichitang, it's like a really good formula, like 4 gents I use when I see stuff like this. So it brings a little spelling error there. Sorry about that. It just brings clear yang upwards to the eye. So again, that's the central chi lifting component. And also we know the chi controls the blood's, the blood staying in the vessels. So what happens is the pancreas starts to break down. We get insulin shifts. The patency of the blood vessels start to break down. So we get more susceptible to ruptures. All right. We see that in diabetic neuropathies. The lower legs start to discolor. We also know that people with diabetes who develop diabetic retinopathy have neovascularization, new blood vessel growth. And these new blood vessels are very fragile. And the existing blood vessels become attenuated, they become stripped down, they become brittle, and they pop. That's how we get these bleeds, and diabetics often need injections. So although we want to do the injections, you want to help control the blood sugar, we really have to deal with the pancreas and help regulate the blood sugar when we see these problems. And a lot of patients with diabetes, you have to educate them and say, look, you're at high risk for diabetic retinopathy. You want to make sure you're not bleeding, especially if they tend to have bleeding issues, so on and so forth. The eyes and the lung. We know the lung is about oxygen, right? That old thing that we all need to, right? Like water, what? 2 days, 3 days without water, food, a week, air, 2 minutes. I think that's the current 2 minutes without air. So we need air, right? We can all agree on that. That air is really important. And blood flow and oxygen to our eyes is important. This you may not have heard before. Did you know that the retina is the highest oxygen consuming tissue in the entire body? True story. Before I knew that, I would have said that it was probably the brain or the heart because of the amount of work it does. But because of the metabolic activity of the retina in the eyes, it uses so much oxygen. So if we have oxygen deprivations, either from breathing difficulties or hypoxia or anemia or blood cells clumping together like we see with COVID, there's going to be oxygen deprivation. oxygen deprivation. We know can cause stroke. We know is going to decline vision. We're going to see things like dim vision. It's a thing. So less oxygen, less vision, less health, less oxygen to the brain, less systemic function. So we have to have that D&D, that deep respiration, that chi, the lung chi has to be doing its thing. The lung governs the dispersing, descending, smooth flow of chi. Also the wei chi, the immune system, right? So people get styes all the time. They get conjunctivitis. We're spring now, New Jersey. People are getting these horrible allergy eyes, and they're coming in like, their eyes, they want to rip their eyeballs out of their head and pop them in like ice water because they kill so much. So what we use is we treat the eyes, we clear the heat in the lung, liver and lung heat, right? Because we know that the heat in springtime is coming from the liver because that's where histamine is produced. So the histamine from the liver comes into the respiratory system, often through the lung channel or through the stomach channel, rises up and causes allergy eyes. But what also happens is if somebody's lung chi is weak, also the lung and spleen chi is deficiency. They're not producing enough fluids or mucus to protect the eye, right? The eye is like the rest of us. We have this barrier of mucus, water, and oil. Three things. You guys see that? Mucus, oil, and water that create a barrier. So if any of those are thin, we're going to have dry eyes, or we're going to be susceptible to allergies. We're going to be susceptible to pollution. Like if any of you guys ever gone to New York City or LA or any big cities on a smoggy day and your eyes are burning towards the end of the day, like that, we created a product called LipoVision, which is, it actually is a lipid-based formula that actually coats the inside of the eyes while we're working internally to build up the mucus, the water, aqueous fluids, and the thick fluids based on whatever we figure out is going on. So we know that there's a huge component, especially this time of year, between the respiratory system and allergies and eyes and allergic conjunctivitis and stuff like that. So the lungs govern the exterior, protecting the eyes to be nourished by warm, by the damaged external pathogen. So we have wind, we have heat, we have allergies, we have pollen, we have pollution. Because guys, it's like our brain is exposed to the environment, right? This is really nerve tissue that's exposed to the environment, so it's very sensitive. So we need to keep the eyes hydrated. We need to keep the wei chi, the jade windscreen protecting the eyes. You guys go out in the wind, your eyes start tearing. You don't have that jade windscreen. We need a little to beef up that level a little bit. So if you see in the wind, your eyes start tearing. If you see you're in pollution, if you swim in the ocean or you swim in a pool and your eyes get like really red, you don't have that layer of protection. So really important. Let's look at the kidneys now. The kidneys are really important. We talked about the kidneys being really important in terms of protecting the eyes. They have a protective capacity through manufacturing of the Jing and the lung energy, but they also, through the neurological aspect, it's for the brain, the eyes, the spinal cord, stuff like that. So they govern the storage of essence, which is found in the brain, the spine, and the eyes, cerebrospinal fluid, brain, retinal cells, the vitreous humor, stuff like that. Engender cerebral marrow, so the eyes are connected with the brain. So the kidneys govern the fluids we talked about to moisten the eyes, the thin fluids, all right? We have Jin and Yue. The thin fluids, that's the water fluids. The mucus comes from the spleen in the lung, and the oils come from the liver primarily. So the kidney supplies the true yin and the true yang. It nourishes, supports the function of the retina, the pupil, the choroid, the aqueous, and the vitreous. So very important there. Real quick, the 6 Fu, the Zong moves the qi through the Fu organs, transports the essence. It's more about the nourishment, okay? It's reception, control, digestion, separate the fluids, move the waste through the bowels, transport, separate the sensory Jing to the eyes. So as you got, there's like a whole thing that I get into, but every organ has sensory Jing. So sensory Jing comes from the liver, all right? Auditory hearing Jing comes from the kidney. Speak Jing, ability to speak and enunciate, which I just messed up, comes from the heart, right? Ability to smell comes from respiratory Jing. So the sensory Jing comes from the yuan source or qi or Jing in that specific organ. So again, generally speaking, the food delivers the yin qi nourishment to the eyes to maintain healthy vision. They need to eat. Real quick, when we're looking at patterns, we look at fire. Patterns is more of like, your external pathogens. The fire and the heat or inflammation is more swelling, redness. We relate that to the heart, right? So again, we're going to look at, maybe it's not related to the heart, maybe it is, but we want to check the pulse, look for a red tip, isolate, is this a heat inflammatory situation? Is it coming from the heart, or is it kind of coming originally from somewhere else and just rising up to the top part of the head? Cold, slower onset, degenerative eye conditions, neurodegenerative, again, the macular, glaucoma, any of these age-related conditions will be more of a kidney slow onset condition. Wind is things like eye stroke, conjunctivitis, ocular Lyme, microbial infections, even like trauma, eye stroke, anything like that. I said that. Anything that's sudden onset, even allergies, like the wind brings in the pollens, you don't have the protection, or just wind generally brings in dryness that can dry the eye out if you don't have the protection. Dampness has a lot to do with the spleen, pancreas function. Again, we talked about its production of mucus, which is important for protecting the eye, cleaning the eye. Secretions, usually a slower onset as well. Dryness, dry, itching, redness, the lung, again, when the lung's not dispersing the fluids, it's more of like the mist, almost like the greenhouse that kind of mists the fluids to the eyes, not only the water, the combination, so it's a mixture. So the lung mists, not just water, it mists the mixture of thin fluids, which is like aqueous water, thicker fluids, which is oil coming from the liver, and the mucus. So it kind of mixes those up together and kind of mists it over the eyes and the brain, the mucous membranes, to provide the protection. Then, of course, we have the summer heat, which is more of a damp heat situation. I don't see much of that, but it's there. Okay, we're going to do a few minutes on the microacupuncture because I know a bunch of you guys were chomping at the bit for some of that stuff. I originally wasn't going to dive into this stuff, but I figured, what the hell? You guys are awesome. And I wore my microacupuncture 48 shirt, so I couldn't not talk about the microacupuncture. So I'll go through this, then I'll wrap it up, and then we'll get to Q&As as much as we can. Okay, guys? You guys are doing great. I appreciate it. Okay, so again, this is the Microacupuncture 48 course book. At the end of the presentation, we're offering a discount for any of you guys who want to order this book from us. You can only get it through me. Some of the other books are on Amazon. This one is not. So let me talk to you a little bit about the evolution of Microacupuncture 48, which was originally just called microacupuncture, which is originally called something before that. So what happened is in the 80s, there was this dude in Denmark named Freddie Dahlgren, who's still alive. Actually just got in touch with Freddie about a year ago after just knowing it was like the legend of Freddie. Like I just heard he was moving all over the place, and I finally connected with him over email, and I was going to go meet him in Amsterdam last year, but we just, the timing didn't work out. But in the near future, we're going to go meet him in Europe, but the COVID thing happened. So Freddie was the guy who pretty much put the preliminary system together. So what Freddie did is he took elements from a few different systems. One was regular meridian therapy, the other was reflexology, and another was a system called Equio, which I'm going to show you guys in a minute. So he was the guy who put this together in Denmark, and he started treating patients with it. He originally, the story goes, he was originally treating patients for arthritis. Most of the points that he did, I'm going to show you guys in a minute, there are 48 points. That's everybody asks, why not acupuncture 48? Because the 48 means 48 points. 12, 12, 12 in each hand and each foot. So 48 in total, only the hands and feet. So after Freddie had been treating patients with arthritis, mostly hands and feet arthritis, a lot of farmers and stuff like that, because that's where he was located. A lot of farmers were out in that area, and they were having a lot of pain. You know, they had to do a lot of hard work, and their feet were hurting and hand were hurting. So that's how he chose to treat them. So he had this big barn that he treated patients out of. And then he got busy because a lot of the patients that he was treating for arthritis reported that their vision was getting better. So what they did is they sent them to eye doctors to get their vision tested. Lo and behold, vision was getting better. So the word started to spread in the early 80s. And he got so busy, Freddie got busy, that he asked a friend of his named Per Ott, who also was in Denmark, to help him out. So pretty much it was kind of like a NADA protocol at that time. One size fits all. Everybody got the same protocol. And he just taught him how to put the needles in. Per didn't go to acupuncture school. He just was like, hey, I'm a tech. Here, you're going to be my technician and just be my hands. And I'm going to show you where to put the needles in. Just put them in. So Per came to the United States, Texas in the 90s and opened up acupuncture clinic there, was treating eye patients, had since moved to a couple states. He was in Arkansas, then Florida. And before he passed 2 years ago, he was in Virginia, West Virginia. And yeah, unfortunately, he developed liver cancer about 2 years ago, and he died pretty quick. It was horrible. And then, so what happened is Freddie was going around. He was actually lecturing in the 80s about the system and giving demonstrations at the acupuncture seminars. And a gentleman by the name of John Bull Sr. had seen Freddie, and this is a direct story from John Bull, because I went out to Denmark and studied with them probably about 15, 16 years ago. And John told me that he saw Freddie do this procedure. And from that procedure, like Freddie ran out and he didn't really have a chance to talk to him. So he basically tried to figure out the protocols based on what he saw. And from that, he developed a system called Acupuncture 2000, which mutated or further developed into a system called AcuNova, which those of you guys who study with John has created a whole bunch of systems around that. So kind of that was another branch that happened. So then I took that one size fits all protocol that I learned from Per Otta in again, probably around 1999, I went out there. And so I took the protocol, we were getting okay results, but I wanted to learn more about the protocol and more about the system. So I evolved the system. We did a lot of trial and error and seen thousands upon thousands of patients. So I took the protocol and basically turned it into the system. It was basically a culmination of like 23 years of clinical research. I'm constantly evolving it and finding new uses for it, but it is my go-to system that I use for treating eye conditions. So this is kind of the lineage, if you want to see, or my lineage. As I said, there's another lineage of that John Bull created. So Professor Yingqing Zhang was the one who created Equo. It's called embryo contained in the whole organism. It's a microsystem. Some of you guys may have heard of it. Some of you guys might not have. It's not a super popular system, but it's out there. And the story around this guy is really, really awesome, which I don't have the time to get into, but maybe I'll do that, save that for another time. But anyway, he created this Equo system, and I'll show you guys. It's a long bone system. So what Freddie did is he took elements from the Equo system, the Meridian system, and a few other microsystems. And in Germany, they're using a lot of frequencies there, so we had exposure to that. So again, he taught Per the microacupuncture system. Then I took the protocol that they put together, scrounged for a couple of notes that I found from Freddie that I got from Per years and years ago, just trying to see what he had was about, and made sense of it. And then I kind of, again, through my clinical experience and my understanding of the points and what they actually do for the body, developed the full microacupuncture 48 system with probably about 40 or 50 protocols now for different eye conditions, and then also protocols for things like stroke, pain, ADD, ADHD, any neurological issue or pain issues. We find it to be really useful for that. So again, just real quick, so Dr. Zhang's system, he got bashed. This guy got crucified pretty bad because he was one of these guys that said, look, you guys have all this stuff about Chinese medicine. I'm going to strip it down and I'm really interested in just the mechanisms of acupuncture. He was an endocrinologist, and he was very scientific and just wanted to reduce everything and get rid of the stuff that was not useful or relevant. Although it was interesting, he just wanted to know what got results. So he created this Equo system, and he got bashed in Taiwan. I think it was either Taiwan or Hong Kong. I'm pretty sure it was Taiwan. And they basically criticized him for oversimplifying the system. That's basically saying, you get really fast results with less work, and you're really efficient. Go away, because you're going to make the rest of us look bad. That's pretty much what happened. It was like a NADA situation, the protocols. So, you could see that would be a threat. And it was actually probably very similar to how, and again, this may be a controversial statement, but basically how we look at chiropractors or physical therapists who don't go through a full program, but they take a weekend course in acupuncture, And, we kind of get, kind of all huffy about that. But, on certain levels, you can understand that there are some basic things that we need to learn if you're just doing acupuncture. So that's that. And this is what the embryo contains information, the whole organism looks like. So it's basically long bone, really simple, head and the tail. So you start with the head, go all the way down the organ systems, all the way down here, head, neck, upper limbs, lung. And we basically, guys, all you do is, he said, you find the tender spot and you put a needle in it. That's pretty much the system. You stimulate it till you get a result. It's very similar to tongue system, which I know for a fact, Dr. Tan integrated this a lot. I know some of the tongue points, you'll see the overlap with this stuff too. When I do my class on microsystems in ophthalmic acupuncture, the MSOA class, we talk a lot about the overlaps in these systems, which is really cool. And the exciting thing is once you start to know and learn a lot of these systems and you see the overlaps, it's really cool that you can start to see, like, it's not so mysterious. Like, everybody's using the same points and you start to see more commonalities and you look for the lowest common denominators. So that is that. So as you guys can see, this is the map of the microacupuncture 48 points. And yes, we're going to send you guys copies of these. They're online. We have posters of this. So it's all over the internet. So basically it's 48 points. Like I said, 24 hand points, considering you have 2 feet, 24 hand points if you have 2 hands. We have our spleen points. Point A is the distal. The B point is the proximal point. We go to the liver A, liver B, and they follow the meridians, okay? We have our stomach A, stomach B, kidney B, gallbladder A, gallbladder B, and bladder A and bladder B. We go to the hand. We have lung A, lung B, large intestine A, large intestine B, pericardium A and B, Sanjiao A and B, heart and small intestine A and B. So right and left hand, these are on the palms, in the soles. A lot of people get confused. I'm not sure if it's on the back of the hands or the front. It's all palms and soles. So people get a little squeamish about needling these points, if you guys can imagine. That's why we have most of our courses for people who want good proficiency in this. We do recommend live training because needling these points, if you haven't done the training, you can get a little discouraged if you're not really sure how to do the needling. It's fast and furious. They gotta be really, really fast. Clayton Shu is one of my favorite dear friend acupuncturists, and we talk a lot about like needle speed, and he has all these like exercise. So if you have ever studied with Clayton Shu and learning his needling, finger strengthening, he's got one of the best needling techniques that I've ever seen any acupuncturist. So check his stuff out as well. So when we look at the system, why would we choose? And again, I'm just giving you guys like a real quick overview. It goes into a deeper dive in the book, and then obviously in the course we give you like the soup to nuts, the whole on how to use the system. But generally speaking, why would you use A and B points? And I had to learn all this, guys. None of this stuff. This is all from my personal experience. So when I'm telling you guys stuff from other people, I will tell you this is not mine, this is from somebody else. But this stuff is what I figured out in clinic. And based on my theories, and then put it into action to actually confirm and validate that it's true, and most of the time anyway. So the distal points are the yang A points, right? Those are our distal points and our proximal points. So generally speaking, we're going to use our A points for upper body issues, acute problems, sensory organ issues, energetic issues, psycho-emotional issues, symptoms, more symptoms as opposed to causative factors. In Chinese medicine, external versus internal, external, pathogenic stuff. Excess conditions where there's more stagnation and congestion, a traffic jam, and hot in nature. The proximal points, the B points, more for lower body, chronic. Organs, we're going to look to treat the organs themselves. So all the B points affect those specific organs. They're more matter, they're more material as opposed to energetic, things that are substantial. The root pathologies, the internal, the cold, deficient, the weak, where we want to get the sensory jing or the yuan qi from those organs to fire up, okay? So finding the best, I'm gonna give you guys some quick hacks here, and just because I love you guys. This is the only stuff that I usually teach my patients, teach my students. But if you guys want to start playing around with this stuff, this is how you do it. Go through the points, figure out the pain and dysfunction, identify the organ or meridian system where the pain and dysfunction is located. For example, I got a Tai Yang headache. right? Gallbladder headache. I'm going to look to my gallbladder points and my Sanjiao points. Sanjiao AB, gallbladder AB, because that's my Taiyang point. So I go to that area. Now I'm going to look to Taiyang first. Is it guaranteed it's going to be that? No, but we palpate. Is it tender? Yes, needle it. Not tender, it's up to you. If you're convinced in your heart of hearts and your intuition is telling you to needle that point, needle the point. If you're not feeling it and you're just kind of poking around for symptoms, let it go. Identify the corresponding MA48 meridian, locate the hot spot, the tender spot, the active spot, the Chi point, whatever you guys want to call it, the alarm point. Select the treatment method and frequency. Are you going to use a needle? Are you going to use pressure? Are you going to use moxa? Are you going to use electro? Are you going to use laser therapy? Are you going to use color therapy? Are you going to use Qigong? I don't care what you use to stimulate the point, but just you decide how you're going to stimulate the point. And then treat till you get a result, right? Very simple. That works the best with pain, all right? But obviously with neurological or internal conditions, you're not going to see as a fast result, but you can. Guys, if you get this stuff right on, it's very similar to Tong and Tun style. Like these results will be immediate. Does it mean it's going to be cured? No, but you're going to see a huge shift if you get the right point at the right spot. It is miraculous. Like it's amazing. You know, like, and again, you guys all have your systems, scalp, auricular, whatever, Tong, Tun, motor point, whatever you guys use that gets those results. There's another system that, you know, again, if one system's not working, this is like a way to get some results there. Good, so you guys are good on that. So here, I just want to talk to you guys some of the common eye conditions I treat, because most people associate the microacupuncture 48 system with eye diseases. So because people are like, okay, well, what kind of eye conditions does it treat? I'm glad you asked. So macular degeneration, glaucoma, and retinitis pigmentosa / Usher syndrome are the most common conditions I treat. I also see a ton of eye strokes, and I see a lot of diabetic retinopathy. I see quite a bit of optic nerve atrophy and optic neuritis, things like multiple sclerosis or ocular Lyme or kind of inflammatory conditions. Dry eye, I see a ton of. Why do I see dry eye? Write in the comments, light it up. Tell me why I see dry eye. Why is dry eye rampant? Ridiculous. Here's your clue, guys. Everybody's on their phone. What do people do when they're on their phone? They don't blink when you're on your computer. So you got the dryness, the EMFs, coming off the screen. You don't have blue light protection. We're staring at screens. Guys, when you're normally, you blink like, I think, around 11, 12 times a minute. It's 11, 12 times a minute. When you're on screens, it's like 5 to 6 times a minute. So you're blinking 30 to 50% times less when you're on screens. So either put a sticky up in your computer here, the yellow sticky that says blink, blink 182, or just make sure you have your protection, because everybody's getting dry eyes, which is why we produce our eye drops. And we have, guys, dry eyes is like 99.99999% effective. Our dry eye protocols are like, they don't not work. I have had 2 cases ever that it didn't work. And one had a surgery and the other one was just an emotional basket case. And she had a ritual of crying 5 times a day. So told I couldn't do anything for that. Anyway, blurry vision from various reasons, nearsighted, farsighted, presbyopia. And we start getting this like, oh, I can't see. Let me put my phone out here. You know, I need one of those like selfie sticks just to kind of read my phone. Computer eye syndrome, we talked about that. Floaters, cataracts, again, retinal occlusions, eye stroke. Seen a lot of those over the last 5 or 6 years. The prevalence of eye strokes. I didn't check the statistics, but I've seen, like, definitely the last 3 or 5 years, I see so many of those. I actually have a top eye doctor, retinal specialist that I'm treating for a bilateral eye stroke now, who's doing fantastic. Comes in from New York City. Okay, so just real quick, well, as we're starting to wrap up, before we get to Q&A, for those of you guys have interest in Chinese medical ophthalmology, it is an emerging field. It is huge. Guys, the baby boomers are growing and coming into like not old age, but they're aging. You know, they're well into their 60s now, 60s, 70s, 80s. And it's the biggest generation, right? You know, the baby boomers, the biggest generation on record, and they're going into their, you know, senior years now. So there's going to be a lot. People are living longer. We have an aging population. Then Centenarian Club, people who are 100 years old, is growing rapid, and people are living longer. Like 70 was it. You know, 70 is not old anymore. You know, people are in the 70s, active 80s. So also the screens, the overhead LED lights that are being everywhere, they put tremendous amount of strain. Our eyes have not adapted to technology. Technology is brand spanking new. We've been on computers for what, 20 years? Been on cell phones and tablets for 10 years. You know, I first got my first computer when I went to acupuncture school in 1994. That was my first computer. Before that, I had the Smith Corona typers, and that was it. Before that, it was just reading and TV and video games. So really, screen started, you know, excessive screen use, I guess, started in the 50s, 60s when the TVs came out. But, you know, it's more, people are using more and more screens. So we're stressing our eyes out ridiculously. So there's a huge opportunity for those of you guys who are looking to get into, you know, you're coming out of school or you're looking for a specialty or something like that. It's huge. I can't keep up. Like I said, we have, in my clinic, we see probably 60 on average. We're about half capacity now because of COVID, but we're like 60. This is just me, myself. I'm like 60 to 70 patients a day. We run 8 treatment rooms. And before COVID, we were booked through September and booking far into the spring of 2021. So that's not to brag, it's to tell you that we turn people away all the time, and I have students trained because I can't see all those people. I can't see like 100% of people with eye disease. It's millions upon millions of people dealing with these eye conditions. And there's nothing that conventional medicine has for a lot of these conditions. So just those of you guys who are interested, we do have some trainings. If those of you guys are considering that. Obviously, I had to cancel like 8 classes this year that we were doing because of COVID, which is fine. I get to chill out a little bit this summer. But we do have all the classes I have pretty much are online now. We recorded all the classes. We have the foundations in Chinese medical ophthalmology, which is kind of a expanded 2-day version of this. The microsystems, which is just which is acupuncture protocols from about 25 different acupuncture systems. The foundations of microacupuncture 48 for people who don't really want to go for the certification, but they just want to learn a little bit more about it. Then we have this MA 48 certification. We have the advanced microacupuncture training. Now we're working on a new class called functional ophthalmology that integrates functional medicine. That's my project for this year. I do have private students that I'm working with and doing mentorships with that. Last thing. So the last thing I wanted to tell you guys is, so because I'm so appreciative for the Cal ATMA team for inviting me and for you guys attending, we're going to offer through Memorial Day 25% off of all our books and all of our courses. I had never done this. I've never put a discount for my online courses. So if you guys have any questions about those courses, you can email me, because I know sometimes you look at the courses and you're not really sure what's in them or which one you know, it might be right for you, if that's something for you to consider. But if you are considering taking the course and you want to go online, I have my courses on Teachable. The links are here. We'll send out an email, hopefully after this, with the slides. It's going to send the books and all my supplements. I didn't get into my supplements too much because that's like kind of a whole different thing, but I do have a whole eye supplement, eye vitamin line that you can see at the Eye Health Institute. Dr. Rosenfarb's AccuVision formulas. We have our courses, and the discount code through Memorial Day is going to be the Cal AMTA. And we do have a Facebook group called Microacupuncture 48 for any of you guys who want to jump on that. And that's it. That's all I got.
Okay, great.
We got about 15, 20 minutes for Q&A.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. That was great. I'm seeing that the people, you know, our participants are responding, and they are very, very thankful about the information. Of course, I'm sure that you have, you can give a lecture maybe days and, you know, a few days, but it's very difficult. 2 hours, I'm sure. And thankful again.
Yeah.
So a couple of questions, let me sort it out. So one question is about any experience or suggestion for preventing and treatment cataract?
Yeah, so cataracts, real quick, are a result of the oxidation and the aging of the lens. Um, it's usually again, you got to do your TCM diagnosis, but the most common pattern that I see with cataracts from Chinese medicine, I'll go Chinese medicine and functional medicine. Chinese medicine, we look for kidney and lung fluids deficiency. Okay, now something could be driving that. Are they drinking a gallon of coffee every day? Are they drinking 50 Red Bulls a day? Are they dehydrated? Are they actively dehydrating themselves? Are they on water pills? Or do they have a pre-existing condition? Are they out in the sun all the time? So you got to look at the lifestyle stuff, but we also need to look at the fluid levels. So it's often the lung missing or the kidneys are lacking the fluids. So we look at those. For a treatment, we use something called Can-C eye drops, and I also use my LipoVision eye drops. The Can-C eye drops is an antioxidant to protect or slow down the accelerated aging of the lens. The LipoVision drops, what they do is, again, they create a coat and they keep the lens soft. What happens with a cataract is it's like a leaf. So a leaf, when you pick it off the tree, it's all soft and subtle and bendy and mushy. And when it dries out over a month or two, it'll become brittle and crunchy and cracked. That's the same thing that happens to the lens. So if we keep it moist and hydrated and reduce the oxidative stress, then that'll help tremendously. So we do have eye drops, we have supplements that we use for cataracts. If you live long enough, you're probably going to get cataracts. It's just one of those things. Cataract surgery is one of the best surgeries that we have, thank God, because all it does is it takes out a dirty window and it replaces it with a clean window. Now, one thing I want to talk to you guys about real quick about cataracts is they have a new procedure they're doing called monovision. That means they'll implant corrective lenses, sometimes one near and one far, or sometimes just corrective lenses. Now, here's the thing, guys. People's prescription changes constantly. So if you put permanent lenses in, why are they putting preventive lenses? That's the first question. Because they get 5 to 10 times the amount if they put a corrective lens in versus just a clear lens. So it's a very big financial opportunity for cataract surgeons to do that. They also like this near far monovision thing, which I'm not a fan of. So I tell all my patients to ask their doctors about it. My recommendation to patients who are getting cataract surgery is to make sure that they know that they're putting these lenses in. And I educate them that their prescription is going to change all the time. So I always recommend patients go with clear lenses when they're getting those in. After cataract surgery too, you have to wear wraparound sunglasses and you have to stay out of the sun. That means even staying away from windows, because what happens is the lens, the cataract, is blocking out the UV light. Now you're getting UV light and blue light to the retina that's stressing it out. So you could have some rapid vision loss as a result of it, like retinal detachment or eye stroke or something.
Great. So let me give you a variety of question. Yeah. And also we have somebody in our attendees, in your participant, who raised their hands. So let me promote them to the panelists. They can ask your question. Dr. Yuping Chen, I think you can talk, right? Dr. Yuping Chen, can you hear me? Hello? Maybe not, maybe she left. Okay, so let's continue with the questions. About one question I received about the glaucoma. Some medications causing glaucoma, such as maybe like side effect. So while you're treating such a kind of patient, and for example, they cannot, they have to stop those medications and causing glaucoma?
Yeah. So we'll do that question, then we'll get back. So
yeah, Dr. Yuping Chen is with us. She's from California, Acupuncture Board from California. Welcome, Dr. Chen. So let me unmute you. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Fashid, Dr. Nami. So thank you for the excellent lecture. Actually, I heard you come from, you learn in Hangzhou. So I actually graduated from Zhejiang University of Chinese Medicine, and the eye department one of the director. He's my classmate. I don't know if you ever met him, called Dr. Chen, Guo Xiao Chen. I don't know if you ever met him.
I might have. It was over 20 years ago, so my memory isn't that good with the names. It's possible. I probably did.
Yeah, we graduated 35 years.
So. Oh yeah, so I was probably, it was probably 20 years ago. I don't remember, but I'm better with faces than I am with names. So yeah, but oh, that's great.
Yeah, so thank you. So I consider you are my alumni.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. So
likewise.
I have a question to ask you. Have you ever build a system to evaluate the effectiveness for the research purpose? And have you ever published any article for research?
Yeah, so we have two. One was a pilot study that we published through Johns Hopkins University for retinitis pigmentosa. And the second one was a full-blown study that we did through Nova Southeastern that we published. And I'm always looking for more research possibilities. But yeah, we have those two studies were published.
Excellent. So when you have the class with more students, actually more students can participate in your research project, right?
Yeah.
And I would like to be part of your team.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're always looking for research. It's just tough, with acupuncture research, there's not a lot of money in acupuncture. And the problem that we had was the people that headed our research, they took a lot of flack from their industry because they're kind of like the black sheep. So it was really hard to actually, when we did our first study, we went through 30 journals before one picked us up. Because the pharmaceutical companies have they were like, no. We love the study, but we can't publish it. So there's a lot of politics there, but I love the research side of it. It's so much fun. So any opportunity we get, we'll definitely, keep you in mind and see if we can get a collaborative project going.
Yeah, excellent. So you learn in China, Hangzhou, Beijing, and a lot of places. And in China, actually, Chinese medicine actually have different specialty, just like Western medicine. I think this is a good system for people can deepen their knowledge, skill. So we need a general practitioner of acupuncture or Chinese medicine, Oriental medicine. But we also need somebody like you, specialties.
Agree.
Specialist.
Agree.
And, okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Chen. I appreciate it for your comment and your question. Thank you. So let's
back
continue.
To the glaucoma.
Yeah, glaucoma, yeah.
So the glaucoma question is you do not need to stop, and I'd never recommend any patient stop medications. First, we can't do that because that's illegal, because at least in New Jersey, we're not primary care. So I legally can't tell a patient to stop. But I do, if they're having side effects and symptoms, I do recommend they talk to their doctor about reducing the amount. Some of them are on 5 eye drops. So maybe they drop down to 2, or maybe they're on 1 eye drop and they can take it every other day instead of every day. So the goal is to try to reduce it, and especially if they're having side effects. But we never tell them to just stop taking the eye drops. But clinically, I've seen most of my patients are able to significantly reduce the amount of glaucoma drops that they use to keep the pressure down.
I see. So another question we received is from for the treatment of the flutters. So could you please share with us your experience and also the effectiveness?
Yeah, again, you got to look at the underlying constitution and what's going on. A lot of times it's called by dehydration or heat or inflammation. So floaters is actually like, if you rub your skin and you kind of get flaky skin, that's the same thing that happens with floaters. It's actually debris. And what happens is the macrophages are supposed to go in and chomp and get rid of them. So either it could be a dehydration or the skin sloughing off faster than it can regenerate, or it's a macrophage issue where the macrophages can't break down. So for fluids, we usually have people take something called hyaluronic acid, which is one of the best things for floaters. But again, check your Chinese medicine diagnosis, make sure they're hydrated, make sure they're not on a ton of stimulants, make sure they're sleeping, things like smoking, stress, screen use, any yang hyperactivity exercises or habits or lifestyle processes can accelerate floaters. I have like 10 people I'm treating with floaters right now. For the really big floaters, sometimes they need to be zapped with a laser, but for the smaller floaters, we have tremendous success in effectiveness with that.
Perfect. So another question, let me go to that. So you talked about the MA48 needling. So when you're working for the food, since it is very sensitive, so do you try to numb it or?
No, it's a great question. A lot of people ask that. And I even have patients that come and they're like, can I put some numbing? Defeats the purpose. So what happens is when we're putting the needle in, we want what's called a recall response or the body to respond. So I put the needle in, we want like a little bit of a jump. That was exaggerated, but you want a little bit of a recall because what that lets me know is with this specific type of treatment or any neurological treatment, we call it the chi response, but you're actually tapping the bone and you want the brain to respond because that lets me know that the central nervous system reacted to the needle stimulation. So it's very fast and it's very deliberate and you're not stimulating, just like boom, like you throw needles in really, really fast. My needles, I'll do probably about 20 needles per patient on average, 15 to 20, and the needles are in about 45 seconds. So it's like boom, 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 boom. But you want to be fast. Like that's why you want to practice. And we usually use 1/2-inch needles to start with because they're easier to control.
I see. So you told us about the herb formula. So could you please give us some examples of the mostly used herb formula?
All the books, the Healing Your Eyes with Chinese Medicine, the Chinese Ophthalmology and Chinese Medicine have a ton of herb formulas. Common eye for obviously Mingmu Di Huangwan, I interchange with Qiju Di Huangwan. Qiju Di Huangwan has more gochidza, which is a carotenoid antioxidant. So I use that more for macular patients. I use a lot of Tianma Gotengyin, Gastrodium Oncaria for things like glaucoma. I'm not so big on the Longdong Shigan Tang. I generally think that's dampness and heat in the lower and middle jiao, glaucoma, allergies, eye stroke. I tend to use that. I use a lot of Shui Fuji Yutang. I use Urshin Tang. Some of that when there's excess fluids. And then I'll just modify formulas based on that. A lot of blood movers, a lot of liver chi formulas, a lot of kidney and liver formulas, and a lot of damp formulas I'll use.
Yeah, we receive lots of questions, Dr. Rosenfarb. So I'm sure that the people should participate in your class. They have very good, questions actually here. So one is the most common points for treating the dry eyes.
So I have actually a protocol. So we use the microacupuncture points. Again, for the microacupuncture points, look for the lung and kidneys. Same with your body points. Kidney 6, kidney 10, kidney 7, kidney 3. And then for your lung points, lung 5, lung 10, look at those points as well. Even like kidney 27 to get the fluids up to the body, Ren 17, lung 1, the Mu points. So look at those points for lung and kidney. But I do have an electro protocol that I use for dry eye that if you guys join the Microacupuncture 48 group, I think I posted in there at sometimes. We had so many people asking about dry eye. But if a lot of you guys have questions, jump in the Microacupuncture 48 Facebook group because I'm on there all the time answering questions. So any of you guys, we have about 5 minutes or so. So if we don't get to your questions, if enough of you guys jump into that group and start with questions, I don't even mind going live next week and doing like a follow-up Q&A session if you guys want, just to do some more Q&A stuff. But feel free to drop in there. So let's keep going.
I see. Yeah. So Dr. Rosenfarb, how often you use stomach 41 or stomach 1?
Not often. Great question. So what I found is with the local points, the points that go from here in, like stomach 1, the lower orbit points, these bruise all the time. I like to use stomach 2 and I use Chi Ho a lot. My orbit point that I use is Chi Ho on the lower orbit. I use UB1 all the time and Chi Ho. Those are my most commonly used inter-orbit or medial orbit points inside the eye. Those are the closest local points that I use. I also tend to use a lot of the points here, stomach 2 I often thread stomach 2 up to stomach 1 instead of going straight in. It just bruises like 50% of the time. There's like 5 capillaries around there. And it's like when your x-ray vision isn't working that well, like mine doesn't work that well, you nick them, somebody gets a shiner. It's not awesome. So we get the same results using, stomach 2 or some of the other points.
So one more question is about the ocular migraines.
Yeah.
So do you have any experience for that?
Oh yeah, my 14-year-old got his first ocular migraine last week, but incredibly successful. The MA48 system, again, you need to, I pretty much use the MA48 system, essential oils, and we have a product called Canavision. Every patient that I put on the Canavision, which is a CBD-CBA formula that we put together, pretty much knocks it out. The only other thing you got to watch out for, other than emotional stress with the migraines, is dehydration and food allergies. So when people get dehydrated, like they drink alcohol, that could bring on an ocular migraine. They get stressed out, too much screen use, but also food allergies could bring it on. But barring those side effects, the MA48 system and the Canavision knock it out, like almost immediately and permanently.
Okay, great. So let me promote Michelle Wang. So to ask you a question directly.
Yeah.
Michelle, you here? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, you have a question.
Hi,
You
Michelle.
raise your hand. Yeah, go ahead. Can you hear me? Hello?
Oh, did I have a question?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
raise your hand. Do you have any question?
No.
No? Okay, that's fine. So, sorry, so we have less time. So we have just one more minute. So one more thing. Oh, Neil Miller is here. So he also say hello to you, of course.
What's up, buddy?
Yeah, he's a great guy, So he's a board of trustees of, and in the Kalatma. And he said that about the that MA48 class. I think he was been in class.
Yeah.
So, and he recommended that. He said that he shared his experience with us, that this is very amazing and working, acupuncture technique, and recommend your class. So thanks, Neil.
Thanks, Neil.
Yeah, and maybe one more last question, if I allow to ask you about. Oh yeah, so the effect of the atmospheric pressure, so on the glaucoma. So do you have any thought for that, such as like?
Yes, I do have some patients that notice when they fly, their glaucoma gets worse. So it really depends on the patient. So elevations, flying, diving, you got to be a little careful with that. Also, patients with a history of retinal bleeding, retinal detachments, neovascularization, that's new blood vessel growth. Absolutely, you have to be careful with that stuff. So altitudes high, submerging, no submarine trips, stuff like that. So yeah, that's a great question. Like, very good question. I appreciate that. Yeah, definitely want to use some concern with that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Rosenfarb. It is a great pleasure. We learned a lot. I'm sure that everybody did the same. So I'm very happy that I see that we have many participants from all over the world, and also our Kalatman members and non-members also receive very great and sound information. So I invite you guys to check, and follow up Dr. Rosenfarb classes, and he generously gave a discount for his events, and also please use this opportunity to join his class and learn more from Dr. Rosenfarb. So, and also it is a great pleasure. Thank you so much for your information.
Thank you.
Dr.
It's awesome to be here. Thank you so much for having me. You guys have a great rest of your week. Everybody enjoy.
Thank you. And also, again, please stay with us. We have a great lecture next week, next Wednesday, same time, with the Canadian Institute of Auricular Medicine, and they will give you very great lecture, I'm sure, because I've seen that they are doing very well, and this is very reputable, courses for the auricular medicine. So
I have taken the courses. It's awesome. Dave is an awesome guy. Fully endorse it. The courses are great. Dave's great. Show up.
Of course, of course. So again, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Rosenfarb, again, and hoping to see you next week.
Take care, guys. Bye.
Thank you.